because in church work we call this an organ recital, but people will show you scars and parts of their body that only doctors and nurses have ever seen before. It's horrifying. Don't do that. It's crystallizing, and it takes you out of the opportunity of the moment to go to really find out about the people you're having a conversation with. Tell me something I don't know about you. Tell me something new. Tell me what you've done lately or some successes that you've had. Let me tell you some things that are happening with me, and let's meet again in the future. And I'll be supporting you in thoughts and prayers, but you support me in thoughts and prayers, and we'll have a celebration fest in the future when we get back together. And I because I'm working on memory, I'll remember what you were working on, and you can remember mine, and we'll celebrate our successes rather than talk about, oh, I love that dining room at the May Company. So it doesn't need to be done. So that's the story. Oh, and then the angels destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, Sodom was unrefined good, and Gomorrah was not adhering to the law. Okay, what is the law? The law of your being, the Lord is the law. So the law will protect you, and the law is the law of being. And that's what you know to be best. And like using your turn indicator, that's with the law. Not tailgating is with the law. Saying thank you and please is part of the law. Holding the door open, putting your shopping cart back is two of the laws. One, putting your shopping cart back. Number two, movement and walking and getting your cerebellum going so that you are alive and well, and warding off the things that limit us. So they were destroyed by fire. Those angels did that. And the physical location on the planet of Sodom and Gomorrah is now underneath the Dead Sea. So if you ever wanted to go there, you'll have to do it scuba style. So, and it's not true, this is a terrible rumor, it is not true that Lot said to his wife, would you look back and see if we're being followed? It's not nice. Okay, so now that's Lot's wife. You know now that you can see this at the gate, sitting there waiting for what's going to happen next. Inspiration comes. You are hospitable to the inspiration, and it shows you its force and gives you guidance. Move fast like your life depends on it. Get out of town and don't look back, and go to a higher ground. Now that's a valuable lesson, and if your heart is ready and you're absorbing this, that will come up for you soon in your life, so that you can implement what you taught yourself while the preacher went on and on. Okay, now we're going to talk about the next bad girl, and her name is Eve. And first of all, we are told in the book of Genesis, in the second chapter, in the second verse, it starts that God created, God created the world, then he created a garden paradise. And in the middle of the garden paradise, he put a tree. It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of good and evil. And he created man from the dust of the earth. And the man was to serve him by caring for the garden and not eating of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and life. So he named the man Adam, and he gave Adam many responsibilities, and one of the responsibilities that Adam had was to name the animals in the garden. How Adam knew Latin, I don't know, but he named all the animals. He had authority and dominion over the garden, and God loved him, and he was beloved and cared for, and is set up to just have all his needs met. And then God realized that man was lonely and that he shouldn't be alone. So he created out of man's rib, while Adam slept, a woman, and he named her Eve. And they lived together in the garden. And Eve helped Adam, and Adam helped Eve. And he created Adam in the morn before Eve. And so then as they were together in the garden, God told them, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of the fruit of good and evil. And so, but then there was a serpent, and the serpent didn't slither on the ground like serpents do hence. But the serpent told Eve, he appeared to Eve, and he said, you should eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And Eve was not a bad person. She was curious, and she wanted wisdom. And so, she said, well, what will happen to me if I do that? And the serpent said, you will become as God. You will know the difference between good and evil. You will become as God. And so, because of her quest for wisdom, she took the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and she ate it, and she offered some to Adam, and he ate some too. And then the awareness of good and evil, because they had consumed the fruit thereof the tree, then they were blessed with this knowledge of good and evil. And they realized, we are naked. And then they realized that in their nakedness, to please God and to not be embarrassed, they should sew together fig leaves to make aprons. So they sewed together fig leaves. And then God came through the garden in the morning, and he couldn't find them. So finally he found that they were hiding. And he said, well, what are you two hiding for? And they said, we're naked. And so he said, how did you know? And they said, well, we tasted the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And then God said, man has become as one of us. And then he said, I'm sorry, but you cannot any longer stay in this environment of this garden. It's too limited for you. I will give you a world, and I will give you skin, and I will give you coats of fur, like on The Price is Right. And I will send you out the east gate, and then I will place a cherubim on the, like on the drive-in movie at the campus drive-in, the majorette. I will put a cherubim at the gate who has a flaming sword, and you cannot come back. So they were cast out of the garden and placed on their own. Okay, now what does all that mean? Well, this is a beautiful story. First of all, the garden is like a womb of pure innocence. And yes, Adam and Eve were womb mates. And God created them in his image and likeness. And he placed this tree of the knowledge with the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden. And as they did not follow instructions, but because of seeking wisdom on Eve's part, they tasted the fruit. They could no longer be in this womb of pure innocence. They had to graduate. And so God ushered them with coats of fur and skin, flesh of skin, to the gate and sent them on their way. And the symbolic meaning of all this is that we grow up in an awareness, and then that awareness, we outgrow it. Sometimes it gets pulled out from under us. Sometimes it is shattered. Sometimes it is destroyed by some event that we didn't foresee or wish we didn't have to endure. But we have to move on. And as we move on with more intelligence about how the world works. We move on with more awareness of what's good and what's not good. And we understand how powerful the experience helps us develop the belief in ourselves that says, I am powerful and I can know what to do. I can figure this out. So you have lived in many gardens of Eden, and it was so delightful and lovely as it was, and then all of a sudden you have to move out of there and move on up into a greater awareness. And in most all cases, it was your desire to know more for wisdom. And then what will you do with that wisdom? Well, you'll use it for greater good. You'll use it to be more helpful to yourself, the people you love, your community, your way of life. It will put you more on your toes to fulfill the law. And as you move through your day and you say, well, what's the best thing I could do? What's the best way I could be thinking? Instead of what's the worst thing I could do or the worst way I could think, you'll be inspired to move on up with illuminated thoughts. And so then, as God told Adam and Eve that they had to leave, he said that a curse would be on Eve, and that would be that childbearing would be really very painful. And then he said too, and I don't know, that he said too that she would have to obey man. So I don't know which curse is worse, but. And the reason God made Adam first was so that he wouldn't get interrupted. Well, listen, when you talk about your spirit emerging out of a womb of pure innocence into more life, and the power you have to tell little funny things because it helps to wiggle in that really beautiful, strong message. And the cherubim at the gate represents a divine wisdom that keeps you from going back and helps you be assured to go forward. And the sword cuts through, and with the light helps you see how to cut through whatever you might be afraid of that's out there once you leave your little womb of pure innocence. God also cursed the serpent and told him he would have to crawl on his belly on the ground. And the serpent represents sense consciousness. It's too much chocolate. It's too much inquisitive about things that don't benefit us. It's too much judgment and criticism. It's too much blame. It's too much looking back. And that gets us into trouble. The most beautiful part of this story is when God said, man has become like one of us. And I think this is just really rich. Us, I thought there was just one God. No, God is, in my belief, and you'll have to see how this works in your belief, because mine is mine and you can't have it. You have to make your own, because that has to work for you. In my belief, there's one presence and one power in the universe, God, the good, almighty, and magnificent. And that one presence and one power is both masculine and feminine, and it is balanced. And the masculine is usually associated with man and mannerisms of get it done, move ahead, use your strength, put your shoulder to the wheel. And the feminine side, represents that wisdom, more sensitive, feeling nature. And when they are combined in you, your masculine and your feminine awareness is combined, then that makes you all powerful. And if you need wisdom, it's there. If you need strength, it's there. If you need whatever you have need of, they work together to reveal that to you. And that's a very beautiful part of you. So that the essence of you is neither male nor female, it's spirit. And that spiritual awareness that you are is depicted in the Unity logo as that, it looks like an ancient Egyptian sign, but the ancient Egyptians got it from spirit. It is a picture of the sphere all around there's one right there, with the wings on it, because this is your picture. That's a picture of what you really look like without the body on. And that is that you are a sphere of light, love, awareness, and intelligence, and you have wings to soar. And then this is, you are then, and God said so in the 2nd chapter of Genesis, man has become as one of us. And you were created in that image and likeness, so why not claim it and say, I believe that about myself. And I believe that when you leave this place, you lay your body down like you would old work clothes that have served a noble purpose, and then that sphere with wings soars up to the next dimension so that you can then have a time to put everything together that you learned from down here and then soar on to whatever's next. And it's a wonderful, eternal, lifelong adventure. So from Eve we learn that the quest for wisdom leads to freedom from limited space known as the garden. And wisdom led to discovering the true identity, which is God's presence within. And as we move forward then, we see that this is not, and then you have to battle this because you have a collection of stories that are like what Lot's wife used to do, look back. You have a collection of stories. When I was growing up, to add to my collection, I went to the Baptist church, which was a wonderful milestone for me. I've been saved 4 times because it was just so moving every time they'd have an altar call. And besides that, sometimes the preacher would go on for so long, and I knew there was chicken at home. And so if somebody would just go down there. So, and I grew up in the Christian Science Church and the Methodist Church. And these were cherished times for me because every Sunday, everyone went to church. Everyone went to church. There wasn't anything else more important to do. There were no shopping centers. There was no football, NFL. And so everybody went. And so in having all those experiences, I cherish those times and the people my family that I sat with as I collected these stories. But in my collection, it was hammered in on numerous occasions how man fell. And God was unhappy and kicked him out of the garden. And since then, the promise of women having bad labor pains and men having them being servants to men and having to toil all your life forever, anything good, all those stories are a part of my collection. And I cherish that collection, but I can't keep that collection alive. I can archive it and then see what I believe now and then move forward. Maybe you'll do this with me and see that instead of this story being the fall of man and original sin and shame and all that we see it as God's loving us so much that he would close off a limited occupancy space and free us up and take us out of the tiny little garden and give us a world of opportunities with which to develop because we are like him. We know the difference. We can assess the difference between what would be really good and what would not be so good, what would be a really great choice and decision and commitment as to what would not benefit us, what would make us a beneficial presence and what would hold us back. We have that skill. We have that gift. We are made in its image and likeness. And so the beginning was a love story. There's no badness or shame or darkness. It's all good, and so are we. And so we should say, thank you, Father, for creating us in your image and likeness and for expelling us from limited circumstances. And you'll always be doing this. If you're feeling like you're getting on the move now, it's because where you've been isn't good enough for you anymore. You've got to move on up. It's like was it the Jeffersons moving on up? Well, and where did they go? To the east side. Okay, so this is real important too, and then I'm going to let you go. The east, the garden was in the east. The cherubim with the flaming sword was at the east gate. East is that way. East is where the light comes up. East is the dawn. East is the light. And we want to always be going to the east. And when I designed this building, I designed it so that we would be, all of us Christians, being facing the east, because that's the source of light. When you're buried, they'll put your feet to the east, they'll fix it so that you see the east. And of course, if you're cremated, you're just kind of all mixed up, but God knows anyway. And but the east, so when we want the answer, then we turn on the light, we look within. And it's that looking within that we see God's love for us and the potential that we have and the work we have to do, because our life depends on it. Let's bow our heads and close our eyes. And then let's with our eyes closed, let's see the light within. And we're facing east, so we're lined up with it. And that light within says, move from where you are. Your life depends on it. Go fast and don't look back, and head for a higher perspective. Then that light says, I am here for you to furnish you with all the wisdom of what's best and what's not so good. And I will give you a world in which to find it. And so, Father, for empowering us with these ideas and these values, and then for showing us your love through these Bible stories and characters, for our past that we remember and cherish and archive, so that we can move to our future, for all this journey that we're on and the joy it brings us and the experience and the life and the wholeness that it helps us develop. For all this wonder and good, Father, we give thanks in your name. Amen.